You are looking live. That didn't feel right. Hey, it's the BWI Daily Edition. That's more the tone we're looking for. Live today here on YouTube, talking about just about everything under the sun. A very busy weekend for Penn State football on every single front. We'll also be discussing Penn State basketball and some of those things with Nate Bauer coming up on the show today. And then later on, we're going to be joined by Sean Fitz, because one of the big things we're talking about today, and one of the big things coming out of the weekend, is obviously the transfer portal and recruiting, and he's a guy that knows a lot about all of those things, so we're going to be discussing that with him coming up on the BWI Daily Edition. I almost called you Sean Fitz. Nate Bauer with us here on the BWI Daily Edition to get everything kick-started. So how it's going to work is Fitz is going to join us in just a little bit, but Nate and I are going to be here for the duration of the show talking about the topics that you want to hear about. So if you are in the chat and you want to discuss something that came up this weekend, we're going to be hitting on a lot of points, like I said in the open. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. As I said, that's Nate Bauer. You can get your questions in the chat if you want to. The Monday live show is your chance to show appreciation in the holiday season, to give to your favorite YouTube channel to help us keep the rowboat afloat on the ocean. But we'll be talking to you and discussing what you want to talk about, including some of the interesting players that have arrived in the portal just today. Quiet over the second half of the first week, but things are starting to pick up a little bit. But that's not where we're starting. I promise, Nate, you're going to talk at some point. Utah had some opt-outs happen today for the Rose Bowl. Fill people in who may have missed out on who those players are.
Well, I'm gonna share this load with you, T-Frank. Dalton Kincaid is the one, right? Like, that's the big guy, I think, in terms of perceptions. He was tight end who catches a ton of passes, is a huge frequent target. I think I saw 16. Is that right? 16. Okay. Yeah. So 16 receptions against Southern Cal in the first matchup. Is that accurate? I mean, I just, he's a guy who very clearly they rely upon, and it's going to be interesting to see. Look, these teams are never the team that got them there, right? Like at this point in the season, once you get to January 2nd, it's just not the same. It's just not the same thing. And for a variety of reasons. You can have certainly the opt-outs, guys who are injured, got injured late in the season, don't come back, aren't able to come back. But also in some cases, you have guys who return, right? I mean, certainly the way that James Franklin has spoken about Olu Fashanu, he's left open the door for him to potentially play in this game. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, Penn State has Rose Bowl Media Day on Friday. We'll know a lot more about, the whole first 2 weeks of this month are really like have nothing to do with football. It's everything is recruiting, everything is transfer portal, everything is NIL. And so all of those things get the severe attention on the front side of the month, but then they do switch gears, right? You're able to kind of turn your attention a little bit more to practices and get those reps in and see what's what ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's not just not just Utah that has lost some players over the weekend. Penn State lost Parker Washington as well. But just before we move on to that, because I think that's what Penn State fans are largely focused on, are the players that'll play for the Nittany Lions. It is important to point out that these are the two best players, I think, for Utah. I think it's fair to call these two guys the most talented players. Obviously, they're opting out for health and NFL draft reasons, but Dalton Kincaid, 890 yards to lead the team, 8 touchdowns, 70 targets as a tight end. Really good receiver. If you watch you mentioned the game against USC, he was injured in the conference championship game, and he still got 4 catches for 40 yards. In a lot of ways, the offense runs through Dalton Kincaid, and Clark Phillips is the team's top cover corner. He is, I think, by some projected as a first-round pick. Obviously, that's how that always goes, who knows about that? But he's in the conversation with Joey Porter Jr. as one of those guys that everyone's looking forward to going to the NFL. Like one of the names we know off the top of this draft order. So some things on him. 6 interceptions, 4 pass breakups in 2022, according to PFF. So those numbers, that's a big part of the defense and the offense. But conversely, Joey Porter Jr., we found out about a couple weeks ago, and then over the weekend, I believe it was Saturday, the Parker Washington news came down.
Friday afternoon.
It all blends together. I was on the road, so it was all the same time.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny because it's almost like a 1-for-1, right? They've lost their corner. Penn State's lost their corner. Top target in the passing game, top target in the passing. So it just feels to me, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but it feels to me as though there are other shoes to drop.
Right.
It just feels.
Let me ask you that specifically. This is like let's get into that is a tactical thing, right? So James Franklin is always trying to keep an advantage, keep cards close to the vest. If there's something with Bretton Strange that he's making that decision, like the Outback Bowl, we didn't hear till the week of, right? That was the timeline before with that game.
Yeah, and I don't even think Rasheed Walker was a guy who it's hard to reflect and remember exactly when all of those opt-outs happened, but a lot of them happened in Florida. I mean, some of those guys made the trip and didn't play in that game. So yeah, we'll see. It's there are 3 weeks remaining until Penn State plays this game. 4 weeks.
Not enough. Honestly, not enough. With all the other stuff going on, I spent all weekend, and we'll get to Joseph Mupoyi in a little bit, but spent all weekend watching Joseph Mupoyi film. Didn't get to the Utah defense to give you a better idea of Clark Phillips. So it's just like if we could pause and give each of these things a month to themselves, that'd be fantastic. But here we are doing the potpourri show.
And Paul, meanwhile, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Paul Ratchford donating to the channel, putting $5 in the tip jar. So happy holidays, Paul. Thank you so much for the donation. He didn't give us anything other than say love the info, so appreciate that.
Thank you.
Quick question from Nick. Which would you rather have? Steelers, Eagles at Beaver Stadium or Penguins, Flyers, Winter Classic in Beaver Stadium? I don't have a rooting interest in any of those teams, but as far as spectacle goes, Nate, which one would you like?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry to actually not have a quick answer here because I do think in-person hockey, when you have that many people, becomes like the novelty. See. Yeah, the novelty of it is real as opposed to Eagles, Steelers. I find it hard to see or envision Penn State having, and nobody's going to like this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like Beaver Stadium does not have the facilities for luxury amenities that are necessary to hold professional sports. That's just right. I mean, certainly the President's area, the box on the east side of the stadium has some luxuries, and certainly the Mountain Indie Club does, but it's just not equipped to do that, as opposed to I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think most of those other venues that they've picked for Winter Classic, I mean, maybe they don't actually care this much about this, but most of those other venues have been, like Fenway Park has undergone a renovation to be able to host something like that. Whereas, Beaver Stadium is just not. It's woof.
Yeah. Woof. On a lot of different levels. Woof. We've got Zach, by the way. I wanted to give him a shout out here. Great to see you guys are live. Great way to end closing the store on my work night. Appreciate you watching, and hopefully we can get you through the end of your shift. Now, we got a question here from Michael, who was out on Twitter asking about a couple of things that I think might inform this question. I'm not quite sure if I know what you mean here. Does Penn State use high-profile players enough to recruit? So I think he means, does Penn State use Drew Aller enough to recruit players? And I know we've got a lot of questions about Caden Prather, and he entered the transfer portal. We're going to be getting to that in just a couple minutes. But, the portal in general here, do you think that they're selling 2023 is a big season for Penn State with Aller. And do you think they can pull off what they want, what they need in the portal, and get a couple of receivers to surround him and to be, buttressed by those young players that are still developing from the class of 2022?
Do I think that's the sell? Absolutely. Do I think they can do it? I mean, we'll see. Nobody had Mitch Tinsley on the radar at this time last year, or
Right.
as soon when things really started going with the transfer portal. He was not a name that everyone was like, oh, hey, that's the guy. And so I just think that these relationships have, in a lot of ways, existed behind the scenes for a long time, right? Whether it's shared interest or whatever, there's no mystery to this. People can talk about rules. That's fine. And I'm not suggesting that Penn State is breaking any, but there are ways to make sure that people who you can identify as a staff are maybe not so happy, whatever, all of those things, and make it clear, smoke signals, what have you, that there's interest there, that there's right. And so that being reciprocated is something that can happen as well. So it'll be interesting to see once the fact that all of these offers have not let up and all of the entries into the transfer portal have not let up. Like it's not as though there was a flood in on the first day and that's the talent pool that you're working with. Right. You've got new entries into the portal that allow you to keep this as more of an ongoing fluid type of deal.
Yeah. Just a quick thing that I think a lot of Penn State fans here know about. Dante Cephas was on campus for a visit this weekend. Again, we'll be discussing a little bit of that when the third in our trio shows up here on the BWI live show. Before then, though, we'll be getting to some of your questions and some of your comments. Jeff, he says, new to donating here. Jeff Maley gave us $1. And Jeff, I feel like I'm at the end of like one of those Christmas movies where I feel like I've gotten the greatest gift in the world. So thank you,
so nice.
Because it's not about the dollar. It's about you being a part of the community here. And I'm glad that you're here, and I appreciate you donating to the channel.
Can I just chime in real quick
sure.
on Michael McCullen's question about like recruiting friends?
Yeah, he clarifies here.
Yeah, I mean, Zachy Wheatley's dad had a tweet of Zachy and Caden as in like Mighty Mites that he posted to Twitter today. Like they're all these guys know each other, and so yeah, there's absolutely recruiting amongst players that is going on and is welcomed. I mean, there's no better sales pitch for your program than the players that are currently living it.
Yeah, I think that's
as long as they're happy. Right.
That's yes, and that's the stuff that it's interesting. That's the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that that happens between peers. So it's not like there's a lot of that stuff going on out. You just pointed it out. It goes on out in the open on social media now, but it's the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that I think is impactful. I guess is that rarely we ever get a whole lot of information about. I've asked recruits here on the show, like, who are you recruiting? And then they go, shoot, I don't know, because they've got a text thread with about 37 guys that they're talking to. Yeah. One last thing, circling back to the Rose Bowl, something else that came up, considering Dalton Kincaid, Parker Washington, all these top players have opted out. All of, I think, the top line players that we expected to be NFL prospects this offseason, they've all now opted out. Now, Kincaid said it's injury related. He wouldn't be healthy enough to play, so he's going to rehab and then go to the draft. Do you feel like, just because we haven't heard anything, is the Rose Bowl enough of a draw to keep the rest of the guys there? What are you predicting happens with the rest of the talent that Penn State has on the roster that can go to the NFL that we're waiting a decision for?
Look, I think it is dangerous to not acknowledge all of the varying factors that go into this stuff for these guys, right? It's not a uniform, like, oh, this is the this is the smart play, and so this has become conventional wisdom, and so if you have any shot of being drafted, you don't jeopardize that. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think that there are players who it becomes an opportunity, right? Where if you haven't had the type of season that you wanted to have. It's your last year. Like it becomes so complicated because you actually don't know who isn't coming back, right? Like when you're limited because of the COVID bonus year to really truly understanding that there are like 7 or 8 players who don't have the option of returning, it changes things, right? What's Bryce Effner thinking? What's Nick Tarburton thinking? What's Drew Scruggs thinking? There's this whole litany of players who really have choices to make, not only for their NFL future, but I mean, if they're coming back to Penn State, then certainly they're going to play in the game, or you would think they would play in the game. I mean, it just seems to me as though there are so many different factors that they have to consider right now that it's disingenuous to not acknowledge that, to not acknowledge the wide range of feedback that these guys are taking into consideration.
Michael, very active tonight. Appreciate you, Michael. And thanks back to you. Right back at you. Happy holidays. I've forgotten to say happy holidays for the whole month, Nate. So now I'm going to overcompensate. Yeah. I'm going to say it the rest of the show, just so you know you're going to be blasted with. Here's an interesting question that I've gotten a lot lately from friends texting me and from, the message board and a lot of different places asking about, okay, Penn State is going hard after receivers in the portal. And what does that mean about the young players on the roster? Caden Saunders, Anthony Ivy, Adam brings up here. If Penn State goes out and gets Thornton and Cephas, which, have been identified by Blue White Illustrated in our reporting as 2 of the top targets, or at least, are internally the guys that we see as the top targets for Penn State. Do you have an opinion on that? Because I have kind of a rant here in a second, but I want to get your opinion first.
I don't think that college football is a place that you can be patient, and that, like, you can't just test it out. I mean, certainly Penn State had to do that with its Mike linebackers this past season, but they still tried. They're still active in the portal. They were still, testing those waters because you don't know, and especially right now, I think that that's what's interesting about this moment for some of those receivers in particular is, players often take a big jump between their first year on campus and then that second spring. And so for some of those guys, like a Caden Saunders, who, if I'm recalling this correctly, was on campus early, right? You get that second go round, and sometimes it clicks. Sometimes it just makes more sense, and you're able to execute at a level, and you get all of it, right? It's not so. When Penn State had the event last year, where it wasn't an event, but a media availability with all of the players, everybody in that first year class who had just been through their first seasons in the program. All of those guys talk about the same thing, and it's not football. It's like weight room stuff, right? Like figuring out how to work out as hard as they're being asked to work out, how to study film. That just, most of these guys do not have anything resembling the type of a background with those elements of the game as they encounter once they get to Penn State or once they get to the college football level. Even
if they do, Nate, it's a different level, because the things you're being asked to understand and the things that you're being asked to notice, I do with my film study, I give fans like a basic idea of here's what the opponent likes to do. Here's what, basic things you can expect. And then I get questions like, hey, have you noticed this guy twitches his left eyebrow when they're about to pass block? And I'm like, no, because I'm not actually a defensive lineman. I'm not going that deep. I don't have that much time because I've got to do 5 shows here with you and tell you about it. They are trying to get so deep into this stuff that even if you know what you're talking about on the high school level and you are understanding, okay, it's cover 3, yeah, okay, which sub-variety of cover 3 is it? Because you're not going to get just standard cover 3 every play like you do sometimes in high school, or vice versa. You're not going to get the same formation twice. You're going to get a bunch of variety. So the level of detail in film study that you have to understand is so crazy that, with a guy like Caden Saunders, that's not a surprise. He had to play quarterback most of his senior season. Amari Evans also had to play quarterback at his high school, so they're not even working on all those things in detail, although, Saunders was a very good prospect as a route runner coming in. But the point here, Nate, is that it's not about those guys. It's about, as you pointed out, it's about right now. The transfer portal allows you to reload. Yep. And if you're good enough to play on the field, if Caden Saunders is good enough to play in the slot, they will find reps for him.
Yep.
They will go, if they get 2 receivers in the portal and they have 5 guys that they want to play, all 5 of those guys will see the field. But it's not about waiting, or like you said, not about waiting around, not about development in real time. That's Parker Washington's career is not an ideal test case of what Penn State wants for its players, because he had to, Keandre Lambert-Smith, I think, is even more to the point.
I think he's a great example.
Had to play too early. Everyone got to see the warts. Fans got to develop an opinion of him before he was a finished product. And here we are heading into his this next season now. And, we all watched the growth and development in real time. And I don't think a lot of people I don't want to say can't handle that, but they'll take a lot of things, I think, a little too far when they go to, what a guy is or isn't when he's still being developed.
Look, if you're Penn State or any college football staff, we always say Penn State, obviously we cover Penn State, but if you're Penn State and you're out in the transfer portal, you're not necessarily promising a starting job. I mean, it's very much a similar recruiting pitch to high school prospects. And so if any of the guys, like, you don't think those guys are motivated, right? Like, I mean, there can be no bigger chip on your shoulder than understanding that you're considered to be not ready by the staff that you play for. And you like them. There's good relationships there, but everybody's unhappy. I talk about this all the time, but everybody's miserable, right? Like nobody's happy with their playing time. Nobody's happy with any number of things. But if you go out and prove it, and if you go out and demonstrate that you're capable, you can win jobs. And so, look, Eric Wilson transferred to Penn State and was not in line for a starting job before Sal Wormley got hurt, right? Like, so, excuse me. I just think that regardless of who they're able to get in the transfer portal, there are competitions still to be had, still to be won, that will be open to anybody who's participating in them.
So I apologize, Carrie. Carrie's on top of things tonight. We are 23 minutes in the video, and I have not asked once for you to like the video, because that goes a long way into helping us grow the channel and make sure that people see the video and they come join us. Like Dominic, who I'm going to assume is all the way from Utah. He says, I'm a Utah fan. Can't wait to play you guys in the Rose. Hoping for a good game. Nate, I agree with Dominic. I think this is going to be a good game. But at this pace, I don't know that I'm expecting a whole lot of points in the game without Parker Washington and Dalton Kincaid. I said this was going to be a defensive battle coming into the game, and now the top 2 pass catchers for both teams are not going to be playing anymore. So, can we handle a defensive game in the Rose Bowl? Can we handle run the ball and play field position in the granddaddy of them all?
I don't know about field position necessarily, but I do think that there are some talented running backs and some talented ground attacks, right, between their offensive line and their running backs, and Penn State, obviously, what they're dealing with. I just think that you don't have to necessarily hit home runs in the passing game to hit home runs. So this is neither here nor there, but I will never in my life forget Saquon Barkley's 70-yard run in the road. Like, to me, that is an iconic play. I will never forget that play. And is there an opportunity for something similar to that in this game? Sure. I think so. I think the talent's there.
Frank giving us a super sticker, which doesn't work outside the chat, but he does say, thanks for all your hard work and info, gentlemen. Frank, here's your donation. I appreciate you so much, my guys. Happy holidays. Let's get into the transfer portal. We might have to. Let's get basketball first, because I know that you want to talk about basketball. The Hoops podcast is coming up this week, but we can't wait any longer because Penn State had a top 15 upset over the weekend. Give
17.
us your
But still,
20,
yes.
whatever.
Yeah,
I don't remember which ranking I saw them in, but anyway, they beat Illinois on the road. Holy cow, that's a big win. So what are your high-level thoughts coming out of that, and what do you think it means for the team going forward?
Yeah, I mean, you're the one who had the winning tweet. They made shots, and so the shots went in, and then Penn State won the game. So it's not, I think that Penn State will reflect on the Michigan State game and say to themselves, man, we just hyped it up too much. It was too big of a game. It was too big of an opportunity. And they just did not play their best basketball. Not only didn't play their best basketball, they played poorly. They played, it was one of their worst games of the season. And so, okay, that happens to you. And there's one of two ways that you can go. And we talked about it in the Hoops pod. You could squeeze the ball even tighter and feel like the window is closing and just really lose your mind and accept defeat. Or you can say, hey, nobody's expecting us to win this game. They left State College very late. They didn't get in local time until 10:30 the night before the game. Right. There was a pile of things that were working against Penn State. And it ended up that they went into that game and played loose. It's like hard to put your finger on. And I understand that it's not necessarily a satisfying answer all the time, but
all this emotional psychology BS that we can't quantify drives me nuts, Nate. Drives me nuts.
Yeah, because you'd like to say, oh, well, they just exploited this matchup, right? And I think that they did to a certain extent by fouling Illinois' big guy, right? They just kind of took him out of the game. They didn't allow Illinois to really get any juice. But, Miles Dredd goes for, I believe it was 15. Andrew Funk goes for 20 and got really hot in the second half. But just in general, he took his very first three of the game was a kind of a stutter step, let the guy overplay the three. He stopped, he faked, took the shot, made the shot. He was under control. And I think that when these guys have that opportunity, when they play within themselves and play without so much pressure, which is something that's been building around this Penn State basketball program, they do well. I'm sitting here and I'm doubting myself because I was fairly confident at the beginning of the season that this was a good Penn State team. And this was a Penn State team I said, I believe, to paraphrase myself, would make the tournament comfortably.
Yeah.
I still think they can do that. Do I think it's as easy of a path as I initially may have projected? Maybe not, but it is that they are going to be competitive in just about every game that they play this season. It is very much a matter of just doing it, going out and winning those games.
And as you pointed out, they're 7-3. The difference between how you felt at the beginning of the season and now is really is 3 games that were in the balance that they could have won and that they didn't. But if they had won all of those games, I think we would also be surprised as well. So things can change, things can develop as they go into the season, but having that's a quad 1 win if there ever was one in their pocket now, you feel a lot better than where we were last week. And by the way, great time to tell you about the Hoops podcast. We are still efforting to bring it here to the YouTube channel. That's on me because transfer portal is a time suck and recruiting is heating up, but we are going to be getting that here on the YouTube channel. Usually comes out on Thursdays, so make sure wherever you get your podcasts, you subscribe. So if you listen on the podcast version, same feed, just listen to it on Thursday when you listen to the regular show. So you get a double dose of Nate Bauer. Jeremy says he's back on the Hoops train. And if you're getting on and off with every win and loss, Jeremy, whoo boy, I hope that you are good at jumping because you are going to be busy this year. Let's get to now the transfer portal because we've got some things that we need to clean up in terms of recent offers and players that have entered into the portal. We kind of covered on other shows their larger point, their larger view of what they're looking for. But a couple guys, Nate, today that came into the portal and an offer that went out. Cornerback Gavin Holmes, one of the top corners in the portal right now. Mm-hmm. You want to give me some of the stats on him that we found today?
Yeah, I mean, Holmes, he played a lot. He played a lot the past 2 seasons. So he's a third-year guy. He started in the COVID year and then but it was more or less a redshirt. I think he finished with like 50 snaps. But he's played 450 plus snaps the past 2 years, started 7 games out of 11, played in 11 games for Wake Forest this past season. And just, I don't know that he's great, right? But a little bit reminds me of Johnny Dixon in terms of the unknown quantity of, hey, was a factor, was a piece of the puzzle for a Power 5 team. And is he, but like doesn't have the, the resume, the recruiting resume. He was ranked 1200th something in the On3 consensus.
That's how you get to Wake Forest, right?
That is how you get to Wake Forest. Although they're recruiting a little bit better. But anyway, just appears to be a fairly solid, productive piece who had, I believe, an interception in each of his first 2 years. So
he has 10 PBUs in the last 2 seasons, 6 last year. So in terms of just kind of looking at the stats and not having everything in front of me, that fits in line with guys that actively get their hands on the football. That's one thing that I think is a kind of a theme here with Gavin Holmes. We got somebody who I think has some inside scoop on Zoe, because Zoe, my wife, is a Utah alum. She says, how does Zoe feel about the matchup? Also, please donate to T-Frank's Christmas lights. How do you know about the Christmas lights? We don't have enough Christmas lights. So Zoe's been wanting more Christmas lights. So I guess that's a reason to donate to the channel. So that we get those. But one thing that I got to tell you about Zoe is that yesterday she had a massive headache. And I'm not talking about me, and I'm not talking about the cats. I'm talking about a real migraine. And she deals with this stuff on a regular basis. I don't know how she does that, because that seems like that would be terrible. But one thing came to save the day yesterday, and it wasn't my massage. Even though I tried, and I tried to do the whole you give the head massage thing. It didn't really help. You know what it did? A Delta 9 THC gummy from Rogue Shop. They are a sponsor of our Monday Live show, and they, I'm not kidding, are helping my family be healthier. Last night, instead of taking pain medication again for that situation, Zoe had a quarter of one of the gummies. We watched some Monday Night Football, and then we went to bed, and she woke up feeling refreshed, healthy, happy, and this is something like, if you live with pain, I don't know how you do it, because yesterday I had like something going on with my shoulder and it was over. Like my whole day was ruined. My wife deals with this crap on a regular basis, and I haven't found anything that helps as much as Rogue Shop. So rogueshop.com, they've got my seal of approval. They got the T-Frank family seal of approval. Use promo code BWI for 10% off when you go to rogueshop.com. Maybe a stocking stuffer for the appropriate person in your family. Make sure you put it in the right stocking, because this is for 21 or older. And you can help people get through the holidays. You can help them reduce inflammation, reduce pain, all these things that cause a lifetime of problems. And with that, we're going to get some answers here on the BWI Daily Edition. Sean Fitz is joining the show. Sean, welcome. We are talking transfer portal. So,
great.
What do you got?
What do I got? Very busy time. Of course, I thought we were going to go in to recruiting, but I'm sure Nate has already covered the commitment of Joseph Mupoyi.
Always.
Yeah, I'm sure you were all over that. Transfer portal, hot and heavy right now. Wide receiver, by far the biggest name, or the biggest position out there on the board. Penn State's offered a bunch of them. They continue to evaluate. 3 guys really stand out to me. Dante Cephas, of course, was on campus from Kent State over the weekend, took his official visit. Dante Thornton, one-time Penn State commit, of course. Seems like forever ago, but it certainly wasn't. And then just today, Caden Prather from West Virginia. This is a guy we've been watching for a long, long time. And I think that those are guys that Penn State has really centered their focus on. It's really been a widespread net, and we told you to expect that. It's more like recruiting right now than it is actually the transfer portal process, where they zero in on one guy. They want one guy. There are tiers to this, and I think they'll take. I have a tough time seeing them take all three of those guys, because of numbers, because of how it goes over in the position room, because of how you can basically manage your roster, from a basic standpoint. But
Right.
at the same time, they've got some high quality ones, and those three guys are the ones that lead the way. There are many more. Jimmy Horn Jr. at USF. I know he wants to visit. Cephas's counterpart at Kent State, whose name is just flew out of my head. Really talented guy as well. So receiver is the position that they are sort of all in on. And I think you're probably going to see some movement real quick because these guys want to be on campus for the spring. They want to, finish up their finals. Some of them have already finished up their finals at their respective schools, make a decision. So, and I think we see some more guys that pop up on campus later this week into the weekend.
So I guess the next question I was going to have for you, and you kind of answered it there, but just the lack of movement, I guess we're now starting to see players commit to other schools. So not at all time to push the panic button that Penn State hasn't landed a receiver yet, seeing as they're so clearly intent on that. But you do think that it could be sometime soon.
Yeah, I think it could be this week even. But no, I mean, if you look at the makeup of the transfer portal, this thing just opened up for FBS players last Monday. So this was the first full weekend that guys could get out and actually visit the school. So no, I don't think it's a panic situation at all. Like I said, they've really, really spread the net out wide and are making an effort to bring in some combinations that I think can complement each other. We talked about the size. We talked about the Devontae Walker. The running back from there has a similar name, and that is just been a mind. You know what? The last couple of days, I believe he just committed to Miami, Ohio, or one of those other MAC schools today. Doesn't matter. I think those are four talented guys that they've really focused on. Taylor Stubblefield has been out and about visiting. I know James Franklin's going to go see a couple of guys this week as well. But no, I don't think it's time to panic or anything like that. It's very early in the process. If you take a look at the transfer portal wire on On3, that thing filled up this week or this weekend, the last couple of days with commitments. I think Penn State's probably going to add its name to that in the coming week.
A couple somebody we already discussed. I want to get your thoughts, though, on Gavin Holmes, another guy that Penn State offered just before the show today. Any thoughts in general on corner as they continue to probe? Have you noticed maybe a theme of what they're looking for, or is it just maybe the best player to bring into the organization if they can find the right guy?
I think it's best player. Obviously, everybody wants to find a Joey Porter, but there's not too many of those big lanky corners floating around in the transfer portal. Find guys that can play. You found Johnny Dixon, who is 5'11", 6 foot, and that's kind of the mold that you've found in the transfer portal so far. They've offered some guys. I don't get the feeling that they're enamored with too many. I haven't done too much digging on the Wake Forest kid because he came at a time later in the day today. So I think that they're still looking for a best fit there, looking for a best fit at defensive tackle. They found a couple of offensive tackles that they like, but again, it's a tough sell. You're basically asking a guy to come in and be your third or fourth tackle when he has options to come in and be your first or second tackle at another program. So that's a really tough sell for them. Same thing with Keyshawn Blackstock, the junior college offensive lineman who was on the board, and now he's essentially off the board because of all this stuff. So tough sells all around at positions where you have guys, and defensive tackle. I think you have an opportunity to sell what you did with Derek Tangelo a couple of cycles ago. But it's going to take some selling, and with the transfer portal, things are just so much more open than they were even last cycle, 2 cycles ago. It's completely different with the way that programs are approaching this. It's completely different with the way that programs have sort of back channeled their way into knowing who's going to be in the portal, expecting that to happen, and knowing who the people are to go to get in contact with them immediately, get in contact with the player immediately. Because I'll be honest with you, most of these coaches have talked to trainers, talked to high school coaches and things like that in anticipation of the portal opening. So I think that's very important to see that. I mean, there were whispers of Caden Prather going into the portal in late October, and that's something that people find out, and it moves its way up the chain, and all of a sudden you've got to be ready for it, because if you're not ready by the time they go in, you're already behind and you're probably not getting that kid.
One interesting thing I've seen, obviously from Dante Thornton and from Caden Prather, 6'5", 6'4", so some big receivers out there that the Nittany Lions are targeting, which would be a distinctive change from what we've seen from them recently and some of the players they've gotten. I don't think that's a theme or anything necessarily, but just interesting that they're able to, that they're targeting guys that they think have good size here.
Go find the ones that can play, and if they happen to be 6'4", 6'5", I mean, that's how Nate picks friends. Just find them. And if they can make your team better, you go out and get them. I will say it's interesting to look at the offers that they have. A bunch of these guys 6'1", 6'2". Jimmy Horn is like 5'9", and that Jimmy Horn wanted to visit last weekend. It just wasn't happening. They're being, I would say, strategic with that, because you've got Caden Prather, you've got not Caden Prather, Caden Saunders. That's going to mess me up. You got Caden Saunders, you got Liam Clifford, you got guys that can play in the slot. You even got Keandre Lambert-Smith that can play in the slot as well. Yeah. And you've got smaller guys. So if you can complement them with big guys that can happen to run 4.4s or whatever these guys run, I think it's a pretty good opportunity for them to sort of balance some things out. You've got Malik Mega, who's your size guy, but obviously he has not come along with catching the football consistently and being a consistent playmaker. He's got a lot of tools, but just hasn't gotten there as an all-around player. So we will see if he can make that leap. But these guys have essentially already made that leap. I know Thornton's production at Oregon doesn't look all that great, but he's had some good opportunities, some good games, and some big plays. Prather, 52 catches last year, I believe it was. That's a really good opportunity. Of course, you play West Virginia first game of the year. It doesn't really mean anything in this pursuit, but West Virginia, I think, not to look too far ahead, is going to be hurting for playmakers. So I think it's very interesting to see him get out of town as the expected number one for the Mountaineers. And that's something we'll talk about, I'm sure, for the next 9 months.
Yeah. And maybe it'll come up tomorrow on the BWI recruiting show on Tuesdays. I want to save most of your good stuff in that area for tomorrow so that we don't double dip into the podcast. But something that did come up today, breaking news this afternoon, was that Joseph Mupoyi committed to the Nittany Lions, a 6'4", 235-pound edge defender out of St. Thomas More. Give us a little bit more about what went on with the commitment here and the recruiting process with Joseph.
This is a big kid, 6'4", 235, maybe a little bit conservative, to be honest with you. We see these kids that are not as big as listed, but this guy, huge frame, a lot to work with, athletic kid, raw as all get out. I mean, this is a guy that's it's coming in at sort of a Jason Owe level of needs to learn the game, needs to learn how to, make his body functional for football. And this is going to take a couple of years. This is a guy that is a project in every sense of the word. High ceiling, boomer bust type guy. But there's a lot to like there, because in the couple of years that he's played football, he's still fairly new to the game. Played at Archbishop Carroll down in DC opposite Nicholas Harbor, who was just an otherworldly athlete. And then he transferred to St. Thomas More, where he's playing with Zion Tracy, who's a Penn State commit. He's actually been productive at both stops. And that's saying something for a guy that's still, just brand new to the game. He's made it, he's gotten to the quarterback. He's done some nice things. It will take him a while to get used to playing at this level, being a guy that can contribute at this level. But I think he's a guy that you feel confident taking a chance on. You've got Nittany Lions in the class already at defensive end, who's a really good player. You're expecting good news from Mason Robinson in the next couple of days. So that makes you feel a little bit better about taking a guy that you don't need to play right away. And of course, Denai Dennis Sutton came in, played last year right away. Amin Vanover has been a nice surprise. So they've got options there on the defensive line, so they don't have to bring in a guy that's going to play right away. And I know with the portal, I mean, you can make an argument that taking guys like that is a little counterproductive, because you could find a guy like that in a couple of years that did blossom at a lower level or something like something along those lines. But Penn State's been watching him for a long, long time. They've liked what they've seen, and they need bodies on the defensive line. And if you're going to take a chance on a guy with a ceiling like this.
Yeah, I completely agree with that in terms of the guys you're going to bring in and what you're going to prioritize at defensive end. Swing for the fences, right? Especially when you are in a situation now where you've got your top line starters, depending on what Adisa Isaac does. Chop Robinson coming back, that was like getting an additional recruit last year at a high value, high leverage position. So Nittany Lions and Joseph Mupoyi both are very upside plays, as you mentioned. Some of the things, and of course, I'll have my film study at Blue White Illustrated coming out tomorrow. If you want to check that out, $10 to sign up for the website. You get until next football season, so you get tons of inside information. You get everything that these guys have been talking about tonight. You get that first edition over on the message board on the Lions Den Message Forum, and of course all the premium content just for $10. And if you sign up for Blue White Illustrated here on YouTube, that is a $10 combo value, and you get this for free. So that's an important thing. But one thing about Mupoyi that I think is encouraging, what I saw on film, is it's a good and a bad thing. Of he was so intent on using his hands that he forgot how to run a little bit, where he runs with his arms out a little bit. And now at St. Thomas More, they've worked on that. You can see in his highlight film, he does a better job of kinetic movement, his body moving as one unit instead of his legs running and his arms doing something different. But the fact that he was focusing so much on his hand usage, and he shows a couple of moves on film that aren't bad. And you talk about him getting to the quarterback. I think you're spot on with that. Of this is a guy that is raw, but some of the foundational things is encouraging, that he's not going to come in and not really know the football from a basketball. And I think that's when you're looking for encouraging signs on film when it comes to project players. He looks like he's 26, and now they just got to get him play like he's 26. And, that's on John Scott Jr., that's on the coaching and development and all that stuff. Is there anything you want to give us a nugget of coming up this week, or anything else on Mupoyi that you want to mention before we move on?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a busy week for Penn State. As I mentioned, Mason Robinson coming off that official visit. I know Notre Dame offered last week, but if you're Penn State, you got to feel really good about where that stands. So would not be shocked to see something come along. I know Penn State's out on the road trying to lock down some of their current commitments. Conrad Hussey was at West Virginia. Conrad Hussey was at Florida State over the weekend. Dakari Nelson, of course, is a guy that had a really good week last week at the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. So that's the big priority right now, is locking those guys in and trying to get it to signing day, to push it across the line. And then Kevion Keys, the linebacker that decommitted from North Carolina last week. Penn State went in home on Sunday night. Very important visit. And gotta say, I like where Penn State stands with that one. And then other than that, you just look at what Penn State's trying to do in the transfer portal. And I think it's all very interesting stuff, and things can move really fast. I mean, you could this is the live show, so this is not the one where I give the line where this might be out of date by the time it goes on, but things are moving so fast. There's a lot of phone calls, a lot of texts, and a lot of things flying around right now. So definitely check us out. I know Ryan's done a fantastic job with tracking coaches and tracking all these updates and things like that as well. So it's a very busy time on the site right now. I do recommend checking it out, because there's just a lot to take in right now.
You keep saying that things are going to change so fast. I'm like, all right, let's get going. I got to go watch all the film. We got to make sure we're ready to go. So there's tons of stuff.
Everybody just wants it now, and that's not how it happens. I mean, these are the commitment today. I consider that a weekend commitment. If Mason Robinson commits tomorrow, I consider that a weekend commitment, because these things, take their own sort of timeline. Guys want videos, guys want graphics and things like that. Just everybody wants it right now, and that's just not how recruiting really works, or portal stuff, portal movement and things like that works. But I think they're getting there. I think they're going to have a very busy week.
You know what? I agree with Jeff. You guys are great. I'm giving everyone a raise, because I definitely have the ability to do that. Nate, any thoughts on Joseph Mupoyi?
No.
Well, I was told.
I'm so sorry we kept you around for the last 15 minutes. It's been.
You have any idea how mad my wife is right now? She's going way over. It's your fault,
all right.
Fitz.
Well, let's get going then. Let's keep everyone happy. I appreciate you guys both coming on the show tonight. Thank you so much for your time. This will do it today for the BWI Daily Edition. We're live here on YouTube every Monday at 8 p.m. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are on our podcast versions, we're going to be doing some stuff there, so stay tuned with, especially if you're on Apple. We're going to be taking some different approaches when it comes to how we do our mailbag in the future. So stay tuned for that. I'm Thomas Frank Hart, Sean Fitz, Nate Bauer. Thanks so much. That'll do it for today. Coming up tomorrow, the recruiting show. It's the time of year you cannot miss anything. So dial in, get yourself downloaded and subscribed, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.